Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We are still missing a number of commissioners this evening. We are going to go ahead and get started, and then we will welcome them as they come in. So we'll be shifting the agenda a bit. We'll go ahead and start with the announcements.
Okay. And if we could go ahead and, I know we can't establish a quorum, but if I could take roll first, if
Sure.
that's okay. Okay. Commissioners Borja, Rathel,
Here.
Corona Sabignano, Tatishi,
Here.
and Wong. And we do not have a quorum, but we will, we're going to move forward after the announcement with an informational item until the other commissioners arrive, as Chair Rathel said. So the county fosters public engagement during the meeting and encourages public participation, civility, and use of courteous language. The county does not condone the use of profanity, vulgar language, gestures, or other inappropriate behavior, including personal attacks or threats directed towards any meeting participant. In-person public comments will be taken first. To make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. That's me. And the chairperson will call your name when it's your turn to make a comment. If you plan to make a teleconference public comment, you will be kept on mute until the chairperson calls for the teleconference public comment. The clerk will unmute you when it's your turn, and you may begin your public comment. You may also send a written comment to boardclerk@saccounty.gov, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Thank you so much. If you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to shuffle the agenda a bit this evening to deal with our quorum issues. So we're going to start with item number 4, followed by items 1, 2, and 3. We're then going to move on to item number 6, finish it up with item number 5 on the agenda, and then the reporting out 7, 8, 9 after that.
Okay. Okay, so item number 4 is the 2030 General Plan Annual Report for calendar year 2022. It's for countywide, and the environmental document is it's not applicable. And Metro, if you could bring up item number. There we go.
You got it?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Todd Taylor. I'm a Senior Planner with Planning and Environmental Review. This item is the 2022 General Plan Annual Report, and it comes before your Planning Commission as an informational item every March. Per state law, we are required to provide this report to the Board of Supervisors and the state by April 1st. Our annual report is divided into several components, which I'll be going through today, which starts with major projects and programs, implementation measure tracking, the county's growth strategies, our work program for the next fiscal year, and these are backed up by the appendices that are included in the annual report. Starting with the major projects and programs that we worked on in 2022 that support general plan implementation. We worked on the environmental justice element, which there's a lot more detail in our environmental justice report card appendix. Mostly we continued working with our executive working group and trainings and supported our projects of the Climate Action Plan, the Re-Envision West Arden Arcade, and our Department of Health Services worked on the food system assessment for the Food Action Plan. We continued working on our Climate Action Plan. We released a third draft in February of 2022, held a board workshop, and released a fourth draft in August of 2022. We went to the board for a hearing and received a lot of comments at that point and have been working on revisions since then. Just as note, the state adopted their 2022 California Air Resources Board scoping plan and a Assembly Bill 1279 that discussed the state reach the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. The county also worked on the active transportation plan. Department of Transportation worked on that, and it was adopted in 2022, which combined the pedestrian and bicycle master plans, and it was adopted as a policy plan into the general plan. Another program that we worked on is the housing element. 2022 was our first full year of our new housing element. Staff worked with SHRA on several affordable housing projects. 3 were submitted to the county or in process. The San Juan apartments were approved in 2022, and 3 projects were submitted for building permits, which included Anton Power Inn, Cornerstone, and Saybrook. Part of the annual report is tracking how we're meeting our regional housing needs assessment, which I'll show on the next slide. And then on the housing element, some programs that we've been working on are related to Senate Bill 2 funding we received. We have been working on the rezone program. There was some community outreach that happened on that to identify sites to be rezoned to meet our housing needs. And staff completed amendments to the general plan, zoning code, and design guidelines to be compliant with the goals of SB 2. For our regional housing needs allocation tracking, you can see this table here shows our first 2 years of our new cycle for RENA, and our numbers are pretty consistently high. I believe our last cycle ranged from 300 to 700 units a year. The next section is our implementation measures tracking. You can see here we've been tracking, we've been going through the elements of the general plan, 1 or 2 a year, and reaching out to county departments to see how we're doing on those implementation measures. Overall, we have 39% that have been completed or are consistently ongoing, and 61% are incomplete, which is there's been maybe some progress on it or no progress. This year, we went through the Delta protection element to look at implementation, and it actually doesn't have any implementation measures, which was unique for our general plan. It was based on the Delta Protection Commission's resource management plan, but we do implement it on a case-by-case basis through our applicants' guide for projects in the Delta that we completed in 2016. This guide helps applicants understand all the processing requirements for projects in the Delta, and it also helps staff, serves as a checklist for staff to review those projects. Another major element that we worked on this last year in the Delta was a multi-department review of the Delta Conveyance Project, the state's project draft environmental impact report, and that resulted in a letter from the chair of the Board of Supervisors to the state on their draft EIR. Overall, we see that the age and the size of the general plan and its number of policies and implementation measures is part of the reason that we aren't seeing as good of implementation or completion of our implementation measures. The age and the size also leads to lack of awareness by other departments of what all of those implementation measures are and things that they, could be or should be working on. But some of those are carried over from 1993 when we had our last major overhaul of our general plan. So that's what we're seeing as we go through those implementation measures tracking. The next element we cover is the growth strategies in the general plan. So the 3 strategies are infill, the approved growth areas, and new growth areas or pending master plans. The general plan estimated that we could have between 19,000 and 37,000 units within our infill areas. We've been working on some of the projects, including SACOG's Green Means Go grant program. The The county worked with SACOG and the Urban Land Institute to conduct a week-long workshop or charrette in North Watt that resulted in a report of recommendations. We worked with the City of Sacramento to jointly apply for some funding, $2 million of funding for the San Juan Apartments for infrastructure, and received that money, or were awarded that grant. And then we also applied for $650,000 for an update of the North Watt SPA to coincide with the work that we received from ULI and the work that DOT is doing on the Reimagine North Watt corridor plan. We have also been working on Stockton Boulevard and updating the special planning area plan in coordination with the city to try to get a consistent fill and density along that corridor. And then we've also been working on updating the county's infill program. So in 2022, we brought on PlaceWorks as our consultant. We continued doing background work and began outreach. For the approved growth areas, these are areas that are not completely built out yet. These areas have a little bit less than 60,000 dwelling units approved amongst them all. County and Planning, Department of Transportation and Special Districts has been worked the last year on looking at Vineyard and the roadway improvement triggers and modifying those in 2022. We processed amendments to the Florin Vineyard Community Plan and the North Vineyard Station Specific Plan to update those triggers. And county staff has also been tracking the remaining capacity in these vineyard plan areas. And you can see on this slide, Florin Vineyard Gap has 71% remaining residential unit capacity as of the end of 2022. North Vineyard Station is down to 37% remaining unit capacity, and Vineyard Springs is at 34% remaining unit capacity. This is the table showing the residential units for each of these approved growth area plans, and you can see that Jackson Township has been added to it since it was approved in the last year. For our pending master plans, we have 3 outside of the urban policy area that are in progress right now. 1 is in the Jackson Highway corridor and 2 in the Natomas area. And together they have a little bit less than 50,000 potential units in the county. Finally, we take all of this and we try to present what our recommendation for planning's work program for the next year for general plan implementation. So that includes continuing work on the environmental justice implementation through the executive working group and training, continuing work on the EJ supportive projects, which are the climate action plan, affordable housing ordinance, the rezone program, and the Stockton Boulevard SPA. And then also supporting the new alternative transportation plan and prioritizing the investments in it in the EJ communities. For the climate action plan, we are working, or we are going to continue working on it, revising it to be consistent with the state scoping plan and the Assembly Bill 1279, and responding to all of the comments received during the last board hearing. We will continue working on programs that we received local early action planning grant for, which includes pre-approved accessory dwelling unit construction plans, and work on a by right supportive housing ordinance, which is about to start going to our CPACs. We will continue working on our housing element implementation, which includes completing the SB2 rezone program and its environmental review, and working on the affordable housing ordinance update, which includes reviewing how it's currently working and going to the board with a workshop on that. For the infill program, we will continue working on that and come back with a workshop and then a draft program with recommendations for how to overcome barriers to infill and how we can incentivize infill to occur in the county and what work we can do in the future to make that happen. And finally, we will continue working on scoping for a future general plan update, comprehensive update. We received $250,000 this year to work with departments to continue that scoping. That concludes my presentation. Again, this is an informational item, but we are available here for any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments for staff this evening? Commissioner Borja?
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, sir. And I just want to give you a shout out. I attended one of the pop-ups at the Southgate event over at the Vineyard Community. Really appreciate you yourself, sir, and a lady over at PlaceWorks to answer a lot of our questions. And thank you for providing me the bilingual ads that we can share to our Spanish-speaking communities for future surveys. I think my just question, and maybe you might be able to cover this in tomorrow's Board of Supervisor hearing, is really just the, as we provide annual surveys, if there's an opportunity as staff to say, we're in the process, can we improve or streamline? Or are there challenges that it's making it harder for folks to develop? Or are there challenges, whether it's physical resources or litigation and or CEQA itself, that we can say that's what we're finding in Sacramento County? I think SB2 gave us a little bit of a call for trying to speak up and say that maybe there are things or decisions that have been made by folks over at the past that may not be reflective right now. So maybe our policies need to evolve a little bit. And I think I would just, strongly encourage the staff and to communicate that to the Board of Supervisors, because there's some times where, like you said, there's things in the 90s there that have already been there and we're still, having to implement some of those goals. And right now, those numbers about the 60% on conservation, they might not be reflective of the world that we have in now, especially if it's a longer term planning. So again, kudos for the staff for doing this. Really appreciate Mr. Smith and your team. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments for staff this evening? I'll just throw out a couple. We had quite a discussion about ADUs previously, and one of the challenges that I think is what happens when somebody falls outside of the state mandated minimum requirements. And I'd just like to kind of revisit that. I know you guys have a lot of work plans set out for the next year. But I do think it's something that we need to kind of focus in on is what happens if somebody comes with a 1,201 square foot ADU. I know we've had discussions around that, and I don't think we have it quite worked out. In other jurisdictions, there's a clear process to kick that up into a more formalized design review and discretion of the Planning Commission. And right now, it's just a hard no from the county. So I took a look at the website today and said, what happens if I want to go build a 1,250 square foot ADU? And it still, basically, it looks like the answer is it's a hard no, or it gets evaluated through another process. So I think if you guys could add that to the ADU construction document or whatever work project that fits into in the coming year, I would really appreciate it. And my only other thoughts is SB9. We've had a couple of successful lot splits so far, and I understand from the report we have 4 kind of in process. So I'm just curious, what do those look like? What is the impact on the community? I know none of us really knew how this law was going to be implemented, and so now's our time to learn and adjust, and just want to take that opportunity to see what we can learn, and if there's other restrictions or streamlining that needs to be put in place. I don't know which one it is, to be honest, at this point, but I think looking at those first 6 projects may give us a good indication of whether we want to be more supportive or more restrictive.
Yeah, I'll briefly respond to that. Todd Smith, Planning Director, and I want to thank Todd Taylor for giving the presentation tonight. Obviously, my voice isn't what it could be. To the SB9 point, we're learning as we go as well, and we're finalizing changes to the zoning code to reflect some of the challenges that we're seeing with certain applications. And we're engaged in some conversations with folks who are doing a number of applications on behalf of homeowners to really learn from how not just Sacramento County is doing it, but other jurisdictions in the area to fine-tune our process to make it better, to be in the spirit of the law.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Commissioner Corona-Sabagnano?
Yeah, and sorry, apologies for being late. I have missed this if you talked about it, and I know it was in the report, but just wanted to uplift and just the lack of units for low income and very low income. I know that that's, there are challenges, but the more that we can do early on in a development project to incentivize that and to look at innovative ways and unique ways to incentivize building in these categories, I think it's something that's really important as we're looking at meeting the RENA numbers and just building more housing in general, that that we don't leave certain categories behind. So just wanted to raise that.
All right, seeing no other comments, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment for this item.
No public comments.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And I think the action is receive and file. I'll go ahead and move to receive and file the 2022 annual report.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, will you go ahead and call the, I guess, are we screen voting tonight since we're all here?
Oh, well,
Doesn't even require a vote. Okay, perfect. Well, we are received and filed then. And we'll move back to item number 1 now. We are moving to the non-contested portion of the agenda.
for item number 1 on this evening's agenda, it's a time extension located south of Alberta Road, 1,300 feet east of 16th Street in the Rio Linda Alberta community, and the environmental document is that it's exempt.
Excuse me. My voice is going too, Todd. Good evening. Jessica Brandt with Planning and Environmental Review. We do have a presentation for this if you would like. Otherwise, our project manager, Emma Patton, is here to answer any questions, and the applicant representative is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brandt. Would anyone like a presentation on this item this evening or have questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we'll move directly to public comment.
And there are no public comments in chambers or on the phone.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move on to commission deliberation.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for item number 1.
Okay. And members Borja,
Yes.
Rathel,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Tatishi,
Yes.
and Wong.
Yes.
And we do have a quorum. I'm sorry, and the motion carries.
All right, that concludes item number 1 this evening. We'll move on to item number 2.
And for item number 2, we have a time extension, large lot tentative subdivision map, small lot tentative subdivision map, special development permit, and design review located on 6 parcels bounded by 16th Street on the west side, Gibson Ranch Regional Park on the east side, the Placer County line on the north, and an unnamed private road in the south in the Rio Linda Alberta community.
Okay, once again, Jessica Brandt, and we also have a presentation for this one if you would like it, as well as its sister item, which is item number 2. If you do not wish a presentation, we have Emma Carrico here as the project manager and a representative from the applicant team. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff or requests for presentation on item number 2 this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment. I do have one request to speak this evening on item number 2. We have Sandra Armour.
Hi. Basically, I just want to express my my support of the project. I do own property out in the the area that is going for the extension on the rezone. And it's time that development can occur out there. With Placer County, as I'm sure you all know, just barreling down Baseline Road, Sacramento County is going to be so impacted if we don't work with our developers to improve those roadways. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down tonight. All right, do we have any other public comments this evening on item number 2?
And not this evening, we don't have any.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move on to deliberation. Or a motion.
Motion to move staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion for staff recommendation. Any further discussion? All right, will you please call the roll?
Yes. And I'm going to go out of order and call you last, Chair Rathel, moving forward. So, members Borja,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Tatishi,
Yes.
Wong,
Yes.
and Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries with staff recommendation. And
All right, will you please go ahead and call item number 3 this evening?
item number 3 is for a time extension, large lot tentative subdivision map, small lot tentative subdivision map, special development permit and design review located on 16th Street, approximately half a mile north of the intersection with Alberta Road and the Rio Linda Alberta community, and the environmental document is an addendum.
Okay, once more, Jessica Brandt, and we have our project manager, Emma Carrico, here, as well as the applicant representative. And I did neglect on item number 2 and item number 3, there is a notation in the agenda that the Board of Supervisors is the final approval. That's not the case. It is the Planning Commission for both of these items, and the request language in the agenda is correct.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Brandt. Any other questions for staff or a request for presentation on item number 3 this evening? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open up public comment.
And no public comments on the phone?
All right, we will close public comment and move on to deliberation.
I'll move staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion for staff recommendation. Will you please call the roll?
And Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Tatishi,
Yes.
Wong,
Yes.
and Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the non-contested portion of our agenda tonight. We are now going to move on to item number 6 this evening. And go ahead and call the item whenever you're ready.
All right.
Sorry, we're moving quickly this evening.
That's okay. That's okay. If you'll bear with me one moment, please. So for item number 6, we have a use permit, special development permit, and design review located at 7599 Stockton Boulevard in the South Sacramento community, and the environmental dock is a mitigated negative declaration.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. I'm a Patton Associate Planner and Project Manager for the Stockton Gerber 76 service station for you. I do have a presentation.
If you could bring up the presentation, Metro, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the project site is located at 7559 Stockton Boulevard at the northeast corner of Stockton and Gerber Road in the South Sacramento community. The project site is vacant, and the site is relatively flat and vegetated with seasonal grasses and trees along the perimeter. The project site is zoned for light commercial. The project site shares its north and east property line with an apartment complex known as the White Willow Glen Apartments. There is an existing service station to the south and a auto dismantler and a residential care facility to the west. A bit of history on the site. In 1970, the subject site was rezoned from a residential designation to a commercial designation. In 1988, the board approved a use permit to allow a service station. Later in 1997, the board approved a new use permit to allow a service station and convenience store at this location. That approval also allowed some deviations to sign requirements. According to aerial history, the site was developed with a service station in 1973. That service station was later demolished. It appears that the site has remained vacant since 1995, despite the permitting that has occurred. The applicant is requesting a use permit to allow a service station and convenience store with 24-hour operations and an incidental car wash, which would operate from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the project site. The applicant also requests a special development permit to deviate from the minimum interior side yard building setback requirements. I'll provide a little bit more detail on that request on the following slide. Lastly, the applicant requests a design review to comply with the countywide design guidelines. I also want to note that the applicant is requesting a letter of public convenience and necessity to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages at the convenience store. This is not a part of the entitlement package before you today. The item will be considered by the board at a later date. So here you can see the site design, including the proposed landscaping. The proposed development includes 2,914 square foot convenience store, a 1,071 square foot drive-through car wash, and 5 fuel dispensers for a total of 10 pumps, all beneath a fuel canopy. The applicant proposes the car wash near the northern property line with the convenience store directly south of it, and the fuel canopy island between the convenience store and Gerber Road. The required minimum setback at the northern property line is 20 feet, given its adjacency to the multifamily zone. As proposed, the car wash structure will be 7 feet from that northernmost property line. In addition to the primary structures, proposed improvements include a masonry wall and landscaping for screening along the northern and eastern interior property line, bordering the existing apartment complex. Development also includes on-site parking, a trash enclosure, a monument sign, and frontage landscaping to enhance the view of the site from the rights-of-way while providing parking lot screening. Here you can see the convenience store elevations. The bottom elevation would face south to Gerber Road, and the elevation on the left of your screen would face Stockton Boulevard. And here you can see the proposed fuel canopy. The design of the proposed secondary structures, including the fuel canopy, car wash, trash enclosures, and the monument sign proposed for the project, are all architecturally compatible with the proposed convenience store. An initial study mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. It discussed impacts included air quality, noise, biological resources, and cultural resources. The document concluded that the project would result in less than significant impacts with the implementation of mitigation measures. The South Sacramento CPAC considered this application in November 2021 and recommended that the board deny the request, voting 4 yes, 1 no. The CPAC based their denial recommendation primarily on concerns that the area is overconcentrated with gas stations. They also noted that drivers may illegally cut through the project site to avoid the traffic light and possible impacts to the neighboring apartment complex to the north and to the east. The Design Review Advisory Committee met in January of 2022 and recommends that the board find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines. The proposed service station, convenience store, and car wash meet the siting requirements provided in the zoning code. While the project site is bordered by apartments to the north and to the east, development on site would include construction of a 8-foot tall masonry sound wall, along with landscaping, which would buffer the proposed uses adjacent to that apartment complex to the north and to the east. Despite the reduced setback, a noise study prepared for the project demonstrated that the noise from the proposed development would not exceed county allowed maximums with compliance of applicable mitigation measures. Additionally, the project complies with the general plan and the county community plan policies. The project would result in less than significant impacts to most environmental topics, and mitigation measures are proposed to reduce the remaining impacts. Lastly, the project was supported by the DRAC. While I'm on this slide, I also want to note that there are several conditions of approval that have been incorporated into the condition document in attachment 2 that guide the operation of the car wash, the convenience store, and the service station. Those are conditions 11 through 18. The final decision body for this item is the Board of Supervisors, so this evening you will be making your recommendation to the board. Based on the analysis I noted today and the analysis provided in the staff report, staff is recommending that you recommend that the board approve the request before you today. Specifically, we recommend that you determine the environmental analysis is adequate and complete, adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, approve the use permit subject to findings and conditions, approve the special development permit subject to findings and conditions, and lastly, find the project in substantial compliance with the countywide design guidelines. I'm available to answer any questions that you have, and our applicant team is also in the audience.
Questions for staff this evening? All right, thank you, Ms. Patton.
Great, thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant team up, and our clerk will get you sworn in this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Hello there. Please raise your right hand, and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give the commission is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do, and I affirm.
Okay, thank you. And if you please state your name for the record.
Diane Kinderman with the law firm of Abbott and Kinderman.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, fellow commissioners. Diane Kinderman with the law firm of Abbott and Kinderman. I represent the applicant and the property owner in this matter. They're here in the audience with me today, Mr. Sandeep Danda and Melvin Higginbotham. And we also have Brian Holloway, who's our community outreach and land use planning assistant on this project. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes this afternoon. We also want to start by thanking staff. Ms. Patton's been very helpful, answering our questions quickly, professionally, with great knowledge and with great patience. So we thank planning staff, as always, for their help with this. And she did a thorough presentation on the project. There are just a few items that I would like to touch upon, if I might. We've handed a little folder to each of you that has a few additional items here, and I will speak to those in a moment. On Friday, we sent you a letter of support on the project. That is item number 2 that's stapled in the folder that was provided to you. And I'm certainly not going to reiterate everything in the letter. What I do want to summarize is what the letter does is it talks about the project's consistency with the general plan, the zoning, the South Sacramento Community Plan, and design guidelines. And it gives examples. For example, in terms of the general plan, there are no less than 10 policies, goals, and objectives that we identified that this project complies with. And then a few that we identified from the South Sacramento Community Plan. We talked about the design guidelines. We also talked about how the project meets the 11 findings that have to be made for issuance of a conditional use permit. And so that's really what that letter is all about. And it's in the record, was provided to you, and is provided again in this package. And then the other thing that I want to talk about here is the second attachment, and this really just provides highlights, a quick fact sheet on the project. And the bottom half of it identifies project benefits, and many of these are highlighted in our letter that was sent on Friday because these benefits are consistent with what the county wanted to achieve in its general plan, and which this project does. And so I'll just discuss the handout for a few moments, the summary, if I might. And I think what's really important here is we're looking at a project that is in a targeted commercial area that's going to provide neighborhood benefits, both in terms of services, a market, and in terms of vehicular services. And we know that gas stations are important in communities for a couple of reasons. First of all, this gas station provides nearby services for people who are loyal to this particular brand, which is a Union 76. And for those of us who are still using gas stations for fossil fuels, we know that getting the benefits of continued of continued usage of that product is always helpful to have the various economic benefits provided to continued customers, especially at this time. The other great thing about this station, though, is it looks forward to the future. And in the site plan that was provided to you, I just want to correct one thing. It shows 2 electric vehicle charging stations, but there will actually be 4. And we understand that in the future, there will be more of a need for EV charging stations. And so in the future, when we aren't as reliant on fossil fuels, there will be room for more EV stations at this location. But currently, they are going to install 4. And what is unique about this, if you look in this attachment that was provided, the last 2 exhibits are maps that show the distance to EV charging stations for people in this community. The first map states closest EV stations to the north. And if you look here, I'm holding it up, we have a little dot that shows where it's located, and this says EV stations to the north. This, if you're heading north, this is how far you have to go up to Sacramento and beyond to get to an EV charging station. So this is going to be a great asset for the community here. The next map shows the closest EV stations to the south. And they're a little bit closer. We've got a few. But if you're heading north, you're going to have to go south to get your car charged, unless you happen to be fortunate and have a charger at your residence. So for people who don't have that benefit, this is going to provide an EV charging benefit for those people in the neighborhood. The other kind of unique aspect of this, and many new convenience markets now are very mindful of the importance of Sacramento County's Healthy Food Initiative, which we will be participating in that. This market is not just going to be a convenience store for junk food, although we all love our junk food. This market is going to be complying with the Sacramento Healthy Food Stores Initiative, and we will, of course, have, that means you have about 15% or more of the products will be healthy products, fresh salads, poultry, eggs, milk, what have you, and pre-made salads, fruit, and vegetables, things that are healthy, and 2% of that amount exceeding the 15% will be located near the front to entice healthy eating. And so that is a great recommendation that the county has adopted, the Healthy Food Stores initiatives, and we're certainly going to be complying with that with this market as well. And a couple of other items I wanted to mention, the comment about, the concern that the neighborhood streets will be affected. This was specifically designed so that there would not be any drives would be opening onto residential streets. We also were very mindful in the design on the car wash to make sure that it is sound buffered so that it will not bother neighbors. There will be landscaping and a sound wall as well. The entire site will be landscaped and beautified. It's currently, as you know, vacant, somewhat blighted, and it's going to beautify the corner the landscaping is, and we've attached again as to the one of the items a pack is presented to you, just the landscaping plan again, if you wanted to see what that looks like. It's going to look very lush. And so it will be beautifying the corner, and in beautifying the corner and having a nice market there, it's also going to deter crime. So the presence of the store, the market, the gas station, as well as the charging stations will help deter crime on that corner, which has been an issue as well. Part of this complies with the environmental justice element from the county's general plan, which includes the CEPTED principles or the crime prevention through environmental design principles, and those are incorporated into this project, not only with lighting, but also with a video system that is going to ensure that they're able to surveil what is happening at the site, and if that surveillance could be provided to police department very quickly if they needed it. But the camera surveillance, lighting, and just the presence of the 24-hour market will actually end up being a crime deterrent. So the SEPTED principles have been applied to this. There'll be large windows. The windows can't be covered with posters. And so all of those design elements are in place. Those are covered both in the package as described by Emma as well as in our letter. And so with that, I don't have any other comments, but I wanted to underscore some of the unique aspects to this project that make it very desirable for this neighborhood. And we are here to answer any other questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinderman. We'll start with the easy question. Are you, is the applicant agreeable to all the conditions of approval?
Yes, we are.
All right. Commissioner Tatishi, we'll start off with you this evening.
Hi, thank you. And I had, I guess, met by Zoom with the applicants back in earlier March. And forgive me if something happened between then and now, but when I wasn't expecting to be here for this item because I was missing the 13th when I think this was originally scheduled. But I did review the packet this weekend and I was surprised by the layout because what you had presented to me was quite different than this. So what changed, I guess, in the month since your first presentation to me?
Right. What changed was both DRAC and staff wanted it pushed back. They did not want it on the corner anymore. And the reason was to, maybe Emma could speak to that more distinctly. We're 100% sure, but I was not at the DRAC, but they did want it pushed back. That's why it was no longer placed on the corner.
There was quite a bit of back and forth during the design phase as to where exactly the building would be located on the site, whether it would be pushed forward along Stockton and Gerber at the hard corner, or if the convenience store would be pushed back further on the site. It was a small site. There was a number of site constraints, and ultimately our Design Review Advisory Committee did recommend that the convenience store be located further towards the rear of the site, allowing for better circulation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your question.
Commissioner Wong?
Yes, I have 3 questions tonight. The first one is, I was hoping that I'm looking for some clarification. So you will be providing 15% total of healthy foods and 2% of it will be located near the front.
Correct.
Okay, because it only mentioned the 2% of healthy foods at the front in our staff report. And so I wasn't sure if maybe that further detail of the 15% was also located in the conditions 17 and 18, which I did not get a chance to print out.
And that's located in our letter as well that was sent Friday, but I realized it's not in the staff report.
Okay. My second question is, in the maps that you've provided us, you indicated that they have to drive all the way up north in order to get to the closest EV station, right? But on the next page, you seem to indicate that there's an EV station right above Florin Road, but that's not on the other map. I'm just wondering if you can clarify that discrepancy between maps.
I will be happy to do that. Well, what I see is the Electrify America charging station. Is that what you're referring to? Mm-hmm. Commissioner, yeah. So that is still north into Sacramento, is what we're saying.
Okay. I guess it's just a little confusing in that you don't have a similar charging station indicated on your map that is located closest EV stations to the north.
Understood. Well, when we go to the board, we'll make sure that's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Appreciate that.
This map does make it look like the charging stations are significantly further away than when there actually is one.
Right.
one major intersection over.
Right,
At
at
Florin
Florin,
Road.
it should show up. You're correct. We'll
So,
take care of that.
okay.
And we'll do that for the board. Thank you.
And my third question is, I believe that this item was actually originally scheduled on February 27th, and on that date, I had given Mr. Holloway a heads up that I would probably be asking if we could get some information on the number of gas stations, not just EV stations, but gas stations that are in the area, and which ones have 24-hour convenience stores. I was told that you guys were looking into that. I haven't received anything yet. Do you have that information?
It is attached to our letter as attachment 1. There are several maps, and I can walk you through those maps. So if you go to my letter, which is the second item in your packet, and we discuss this attachment at page 16 of the document, but I can read what we've got here if you want to look at the 3 maps. So here's what we've got. So let's see. There are 3, let's see. We have maps of gas stations within 1/2 mile, and then the second one is 1 mile, and then the next one is 1.5 miles from the project site.
Okay.
So it says right here, the applicant is not aware of any vacant or the project is located on a vacant parcel that was previously a gas station, and there's only 1 gas station within the 1/2 mile radius. And then we go on to say, if you increase the radius to 1 mile, there are 4 more gas stations, with 3 of those 4 open to 24 hours. All 5 of the gas stations within 1 mile radius include markets. And this is at page 16 of our letter. At the top is what I'm just referring to here.
Okay. And I
Yes.
apologize, I did not get a chance to read
That's-
through this letter.
Understood.
And
It
so
came
I
late.
wasn't aware that this information was provided to us. I guess next time, if there's any future applications before us, and if I asked a specific question, I would like to be directly given that information as well. And I mean, I guess that seems to, because I didn't know if I was going to get that information or not, and so I did a quick Google, it was based on Google Maps search, but, my findings showed that there were a little bit less than 20 gas stations within a 4-mile radius of this gas station. Most of them are within a 2-mile radius, and I think, at least according to a very rough count, 16 or 17 of them have 24-hour convenience stores open. So that was at least just based off of my very quick Google Maps finding.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
And those are my questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corona Sabagnano.
I also just want to say thank you also for reaching out to me and meeting with me, answering my questions that I had. I had the similar question that Commissioner Wong just mentioned, and I was looking at the map. I just wanted to make sure that I understand it correctly. The dots that are blue and red, those are the existing gas stations?
Correct.
Okay, and there are different kinds of gas stations, or are they Chevron? Because that's the image I get when I look.
I beg your pardon. Could you
Are
please-
they all kinds of different brands of gas stations, or are these only Chevrons?
They're different brands.
Different, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may just add, it says 3, so looking at the 1.5 mile radius, there were 6 more gas stations with 3 open 24 hours, and then 3 of the 6 gas stations did not have markets. So that was the total that was discussed at page 16. And what I can do for the board also is give the tally, because I think that's helpful, as the other commissioner had stated, to have that tally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Then, and I had asked, and you mentioned it today too, that the reason for this project was that, people liking to stick to their brands and the 76. Where in this map is the closest 76 to this project?
I don't know if I may
Okay.
defer to my team. Do you know, Brian?
If I may, according to Google Maps, it's 1 mile away, at least from what I could tell this afternoon.
Hi, Brian Holloway, Holloway Land Company, and you want me to swear me in?
Yes.
Okay.
And raise your right hand and make appropriate responses. I do swear that the testimony you're about to give this commission is the truth, so help me God, and if you do not swear to affirm.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. If I recall, the nearest 76 was west of Highway 99, and I want to say around Florin, if I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, so you had to go across the highway to get to the nearest 76 station, which is the same brand as this applicant.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then just my last question, I was just curious, I know that you have done some outreach to the community about this project, but just curious what targeted outreach was done to the multifamily housing adjacent to the project?
We did not outreach to the multifamily housing project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does staff have any comments? I hear some discussion amongst the applicant team about whether this multifamily was notified of the project adjacent.
Yes, they were notified as a part of the process. They received letters in advance of the CPAC meeting, and they also received letters in advance of the hearing today.
And is that owners or tenants or both? Both. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, staff is still just trying to figure out the maps as well. It is the blue and red dots or the yellow pins?
She had a question about the different colored dots on the map. Could you articulate your question again, please?
Yeah, so if you're looking at I think it's the 1 mile radius, I see 2 yellow pins for a Valero and looks like a 7-Eleven. But then there's a lot of blue dots too.
I believe the blue dots were other fuel stations.
Other fuel state, okay.
Yeah.
So that's, okay. And the yellow pins were,
Just
happened.
when I looked at those particular locations on Google Earth, it pinned them.
okay. Works for me. Thank you, Brian.
It's just, and then you can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
So those blue dots, I don't see fuel stations at those blue dots. I see one of them being a quick quack car wash, one of them being a mini storage. One of them's in the middle of a neighborhood, which I don't think is a fuel station. Our resident expert who's researched the fuel stations.
I mean, I did not print out my Google Maps today, and I can see if I can pull something up really quick on.
No, I have it up, Google Maps up right now.
I mean, I think it's,
I see the yellow pins.
I think it's
as
interesting
gas
that
stations.
you and I are getting different Google Maps, apparently. Because you say you're not seeing them, but
Not all these blue dots on here. I'm seeing the gas stations. Yeah, if you do a radius, I see the ones that you see for sure.
yeah, okay.
But as far as their map of blue dots, I don't see that there's.
So we actually didn't
19
use
in this.
Google Maps to identify the gas stations. We actually used Google Earth and actually looked for fuel stations. So we wanted to make sure we got them all.
And there's an Exxon across the street.
Yes, there's the one across the street, yeah.
So I think at this point we discount the maps, or at least I will be discounting the maps because I don't know if they really are indicative of what is on the ground, at least with my research. Commissioner.
Well, here's what I'm pulling up at least.
When you say fuel, are you including then anyone that sells like propane tanks?
Whatever.
Just gas stations.
Okay, yeah. 'cause
Well, then that
my-
would be very confusing because I don't think every blue dot there is a gas station.
Well, at least on this, it's pulling up gas stations. So I can't speak to if this matches this. If you want to look at this, Commissioner, you can. I don't know if it's
No,
helpful.
it's okay. I'm trying to understand it too, and I just.
Commissioner Borja, you are up.
Thank you, everyone. As my colleagues are looking at maps, I grew up in this area, so I can tell you by heart how many gas stations there are, and I can also kind of share with you that not all of them will be providing fresh food like the applicants are intending to do. So thank you for that. We have a lot of food deserts in the South Sacramento area, and one of the two questions that I had, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Kinderman. The first one is, does the owner intend to have WIC-related foods, women, infants, children, as part of the Healthy Foods Initiative that you've submitted?
Yes.
And then I would assume that would also include SNAP and CalFresh, which are kind of low-income fresh fruits.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Yes.
And then the second, what are the intended levels of chargers for the gas station? Would that be like a level 2, so like a slower, or a
2. I'm getting the 2 signal.
level 2? Okay,
Thank you.
understood.
All these details.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're
and then
welcome.
I also, Chair Rathel, had met with the applicants, I want to say a few weeks ago, and I did see some changes on the map. I was just curious, when you presented to the CPAC, because they did make a note about potentially cutting through the gas station to make a right, which I'm familiar with the street. It's going to be really hard, and even now with the changes, I don't even think that would save anybody time. In fact, that might actually be a little bit harder. I just wasn't sure if we've had the opportunity to share with the CPAC folks the updated maps since you guys have came in and talked to them.
I will defer to staff on that, please.
The CPAC did see the correct exhibits when the project went to them in, let's see here, 2021, November 2021. I think the exhibits that you received were probably the incorrect exhibits that were outdated. So the exhibits that went to the CPAC and to the DRAC were up to date.
But the project site was updated based on the DRAC comments after the CPAC saw it. Is that correct?
It was updated during the design review process in preparing for the DRAC. So there was a lot of back and forth. If my memory serves me right, I think this project actually went to DRAC a couple of times, and there was a couple of rounds of comments.
Want to speak to that? Yeah.
We'll do a third swearing in this evening.
And if you could please raise your right hand, and the appropriate response is I do. And do you swear that oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, that the testimony you're about to give this commission is the truth, so help you God? And if you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do.
Okay, and if you could state your name. for the
Melvin
record,
Higginbotham.
And please proceed.
Thank you. I'm the architect for the project. So it's all painfully etched into my mind, the process we went through. And I just wanted to just clarify how we arrived where we are now with this design. And I appreciate the question and the confusion on it. When we went to, from my memory, when we went to CPAC, we originally had the building on the corner. And CPAC did not like, the members of CPAC, we had the building on the corner, we had the car wash right on the property line. And they did not like the height of the car wash, and they didn't like, for some reason, they did not like the building on the corner. And it was that design that they said they expressed concerns about cutting through. So we went to DRAC, and we received similar comments, and so we continued DRAC and took all of their comments and worked with staff to come up with the current design that you have now before you. And in that current design, we lowered the height of the car wash. We attached it to the C-store and tried to give as much relief as possible to the property line and still provide. And we cut back from 6 pumps to 5 pumps. And DRAC approved this with a few minor, they mentioned a few minor things during the meeting that they said they put in staff's hands, and we worked with staff to address those minor, there were little things like architectural detail here and there, and just some minor items, landscaping, the trees on the corner, things like that. And so we addressed all of that, and that's how we wound up with the plan that you have before you. That's the process that I remember.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If I may state, I have the old one with me. Would you like to see that? Would you like me to? No.
I think we've seen that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You've seen it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have no further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Borja. I have a couple
Yes.
here, and just kind of want to talk. I understand the sensitivity to alcohol sales, especially in the concern over oversaturation, and I just don't think it's something. It was addressed in the report, but at 10 p.m., literally the employees will have no ability to sell alcohol. Is there automatic locking of the coolers? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, so what will happen with the alcohol sales, and of course we'll spend time on this with the board as well, they will not be able to, everything will be locked, and they will not be able to sell any alcohol from those coolers. And they're up near the front of the store, and it's a very small portion of the store. There is in the materials, not what I gave to you today, but in other materials in the record that shows the location of where the alcohol would be. So it's limited in terms of the time of sale of the alcohol and the type. It's only beer and wine, and they cannot sell individual types of large cans and things like that. They can sell a bottle of wine, but not these small things that people can run and go out and drink quickly. So both the type of alcohol is limited and the time of the sales are limited as well. And this applicant and landowner have experience elsewhere in California with this type of a market and fuel sales, and they have not had any incidents, sheriff's incidents. So they stay in close touch with sheriffs, and they have this surveillance system that helps. And the windows, as I had started to mention previously, part of the crime prevention design is they don't have posters and things all over the windows so people can see what's going on in the store. So there's a whole lot of visibility going on.
And could you talk, are other service stations or 24-hour stations in the vicinity restricted in the same way for alcohol sales?
That I do not know.
Okay.
Do you know? Yeah. I don't know. So. We don't know, because if they were older, they were probably not given the same conditions of approval by the Sheriff's Department that are given out in the last, 5 years or so.
Understood. I was just curious if you had any more.
We have not investigated that. It depends on the age of the market. If it's just a plain market, they don't have those restrictions. If it is this type of a newer store, they would have the restrictions, because that's what the sheriff's office is doing right now. But if it's just a regular alcohol, liquor store, they would not have those restrictions. Yes.
I'd like to add one thing to a pointed answer to the question. The locks are manual, but the POS system automatically will not allow sale of alcohol after the appointed time.
Thank you. All right, any further questions for the applicant team this evening? All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening. Appreciate your time.
And with that, we'll go ahead and open up public comment.
And there are no public comments on the phone.
All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move to deliberation.
I guess I'll start off by saying, while I acknowledge that this project is consistent with the community plan and the general plan, it is also, as the Planning Commission, it's also within our authority to decide whether or not we think something would be a good fit for the community. And I feel that there are plenty of gas stations already in the area, many of them already with convenience stores, and many of them already with 24-hour convenience stores. I just wish that I wish that there could have been a little bit more focus on providing some kind of benefit. I know that the applicant has provided us a letter with all the benefits that they think that the gas station would provide, but I wish that there would have been a little bit more thought into maybe other ways that the community could have benefited without adding another gas station with another 24-hour convenience store.
Thank you. Commissioner Tatishi?
So, this is one of those areas where I'm struggling a bit with the project as it is conceived now. I really preferred the other alternative, which seemed to me to make it more of a walkable facility, one that would be inclusive in the community in such a way where it seems inviting. This doesn't feel as inviting to me. It feels like you should drive here versus walk here. And that was something that I found appealing about the old design, was that having it on the corner, having big open windows right on the corner and the frontage provided an opportunity, one from a security standpoint, as people are driving by. Here it is tucked behind. You're going to be driving past trees, cars. You're not going to see into that the way that we were going to be seeing into it. From a security standpoint, I have some concerns there. We're moving in a direction as a state to not have combustible engines, and a gas station or a fueling station like this will be obsolete in the next decade or so. And so this facility is going to be left rendered from an obsolete standpoint. And I really felt the other way would have been something that could have stood or lasted time, because it would have been something that could be more embedded. And as Commissioner Borja said, if this is something that is needed from a food desert standpoint, because there needs to be access to fresh foods and things like that, if people are needing these types of things, again, I feel like it's just more inviting when you put those types of things on the street side. So I'm struggling with this project as it is, because I don't feel like it fits in the same way, and I have concerns. There's a gas station across the street. I'm still confused by the maps as to whether or not this is as needed or as not needed, other than a brand dynamic of needing a 76 on this side of the freeway. So I have concerns.
Commissioner Borja?
Thank you for the staff and the applicant for the presentation. Full transparency, I lived in 95828, still now live in 95829. I've walked, biked, and driven past that lot. There's been a lot of, I don't want to say crime, but there has been a lot of homeless or folks that may need mental assistance that have literally used that lot, and they've used Gerber as one of those areas, and so there are communities of concern there. And if you look at the open space that have not been built, I understand where everyone's coming from with the propensity or the number of volume of gas stations, but majority of, at least from when we did economic research on a gas station, it's not just the sale of the gas, it's really the convenience and the sale of the food that comes in there. And you're looking at a neighborhood by Stockton Boulevard that is high transit usage, lower income, folks of color, and if the communities are shifting into EVs, there's an opportunity. At least it's one of the few gas stations that I've have had the privilege of reviewing through the last 2 years of being in this board, that have even looked at alternative energy at a place that scored low, below market with SMUD's EV charging rating, and the closest one you would have to go to Walmart, which is a little bit north. So I appreciate where the applicant team's coming from, and I look at the general plan and I look at what the community may need, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the community. I'm just one of 5 voices here, but that lot has not been developed, and we have a willing applicant that's willing to develop and still listen to our community members in there and still provide some sort of economic benefit. And so I'm leaning towards supporting the project. I do hear your concern, Commissioner Tatishi, about I saw I think what you had seen, which is the building closer to the sidewalk, where they would still have the opportunity to walk. There are transmission lines or power poles that's already on Gerber right there that may be moved as part of this. But yeah, I'd love to, if at all possible, have a consideration of more of a walkable or bikeable and more inviting place. But I still think that it's that place has needed a lot of love. There hasn't been a lot of development that's happening in there, and I think kind of balancing what we have now and what we may need in the future there, I think that we all have the responsibility to take a look at the pros and cons. So really do appreciate that. And one more thing that I wanted to add, there's I don't want to say a substation, but there's a sheriff both in the South Sac area and Little Saigon, as well as in the Gerber area, that already provides community engagement. And when I attended a number of those, really the availability of alcohol wasn't the one that was kind of inciting crime, but rather it's really the lack of development or investment in a corridor in which homelessness and other types of crimes start happening. And I think if we have an opportunity to kind of look at it in a bigger picture and see how this might play in, again, just my 2 cents, I'm a little biased because I grew up there, but South Sacramento has been a community that's been disinvested and development hasn't happened. And, I urge the commissioners to just kind of see that perspective from somebody who grew up there. But other than that, thank you and appreciate the comments.
Commissioner Wong.
If I may respectfully disagree, well, I agree that South Sacramento has, maybe not received as much investment as it deserves, and, it deserves better. Therefore, I also think it deserves better than another gas station. We talk about food deserts and things like that, and of course, going back to my trusty iPad and Google Maps. I'm just kind of curious, and while I don't know exactly what would be a better use than the gas station, whether it be a small actual grocery store or whatever, right? But what do you consider to be a food desert? I'm just curious.
I appreciate it. In my prior life, I project managed and did legislation for the WIC program. So a food desert would actually fall into like 2 or 3 things, depending if you're using like a USDA standard or like a Sacramento County standard. Mm-hmm. But if you were to look at, and again, I'm not paid by the applicants, I just grew up in South Sacramento, the only areas that would capture SNAP, WIC, or any other EBT benefits would probably be the big chain stores, which would be your Foodsco, that is about, I want to say east of that site. Mm-hmm. North of that site would probably be the Walmart, that's the closest. Yeah. And then now when you start looking at like culturally sensitive types of food that would provide, beans and tortillas as opposed to just like bread, then your number starts going down. And then that's kind of where you're as an applicant or somebody who may want to be able to use the types of services, that not every gas station would be EBT, WIC certified or SNAP certified.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and on that point, it does look like that there's a Save Mart and a Foodsco, the next main intersection over to the east, over at Power Inn and Gerber. And then if you want to go more towards, culturally sensitive type foods, I love my my SF Market. You got to go, north of Florence. So, I just kind of wanted to, throw that out there that. If we're voting for this because we feel like they're providing healthy choices, I guess I would disagree that 15% of fresh 15% is. I don't think. I mean, what do I know about running a grocery store? But 15% of the stock that you carry is fresh food does not seem like it's an abundance of healthy food, and 2% of it being at the front, I don't know, those numbers just don't really impress me all that much. Granted, that's a part of the policy that we have. Maybe I just am too idealistic and would want a stronger fresh food policy, but that's a whole different matter than this before us. But thank you for the robust debate.
Commissioner Corona Sevigniano.
So I also have concerns with this project. I agree with, the comments that have been shared. I think that when we think of economic development, I guess my initial thought is not a gas station. I think it's looking at something more than that, and I think this community, like Commissioner Wong said, deserves better. I, am sympathetic to the food desert, the providing the fresh foods, but I also don't think that should be the norm. Like the kids that grow up in that area, the people that go to the grocery store should not rely on a gas station for their fresh foods. Like, it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right to me. I also, when I had looked at the gas stations before this meeting and did see that there was one, right, like the one across the street, there's a gas station, an intersection before and an intersection after. And to me, that seems to serve the purpose. I think that the need of gas stations just in that small geographic area, of course, the Commissioner Wong did further research. The information that we have from the applicant shows that there's a lot more. And so I think that just because something is consistent to an area, a project is consistent in an area, I think it's because that's been allowed for. And I think that adding another gas station in this area just doesn't feel right to me. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to call for a motion one way or the other. So to focus in the debate, you guys will have plenty of opportunities to discuss the motion on the table after that.
Chair Rathel, it's Jessica Brandt with Planning. I did want to acknowledge the applicant may want to come up, perhaps address some of the comments. If you would oblige them the opportunity before a motion.
Sounds good. Ms. Kinderman, you come on up.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I'm just going to mention one item. We would be willing to continue to go back to redesign where we had it in the first place and meet with DRAC again and tell them this was a more desirable approach if that's something that you would like to consider a continuance for.
Thank you so much for that feedback. Lots of options out there.
I'd start it off by having a motion of the continuance. I think if the applicant's available to kind of work with the DRAC and address some of those concerns that were heard by the board today, and hopefully just change the map so we're not getting confused with the maps. But other than that, that's my motion, Chair Rathel.
All right, we have a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue. I'll just state my own opinion to start. I don't know if continuing is going to resolve our disagreements about this project. So I hesitate to kick the decision down the road if it's not something that with a redesign is going to resolve the issues. I don't like putting the applicant off. I'd rather get to a yes or no more quickly if the item is if it's not about design. So I would agree with Commissioner Tishii that I did like the design that was more walkable, and I think it has its own issue of security, having more behind a building or obscured by a building. But I do think, it would probably serve the interests of the community longer. So I get that the design is part of it. So just that's my piece on continuance. Any other discussion on the continuance motion?
I guess I would just like to clarify that if we vote to approve a continuance, that's not necessarily a vote to also approve if they do come back and with a redesign thing. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Because I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that I don't know, at least from my perspective, if a redesign will address my concerns.
Understood. Other comments on the motion to continue?
I would just say that, my biggest concerns on this, it's not necessarily the idea of a gas station. I just believe that this is going to be a long-term development in that community, and I want to make sure that it can be viable beyond just a gas station. And that's where I do think if we can enhance the market and move it forward, it can be a different asset to that community long-term.
Any other discussion other than I think we need some clarification, continue indefinitely or until time further
Right, can we continue to a date certain or until the next available spot?
I think we would need time to take it to our Design Review Advisory Committee. They do meet twice a month. I don't know. I think just drop it. I think we probably would be best served by dropping it to provide the opportunity.
It's a continuance, an open-ended continuance.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've already had so much of a hearing, we can't just drop it at this point. There's a record.
Okay.
All right, just to clarify the motion, continue indefinitely.
indefinitely.
To time uncertain. Got it. And a second. All right, any further discussion before I call the roll? All right, please call the roll.
And we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Borja with a second from Commissioner Tatishi. Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Tatishi,
Yes.
Wong,
Yes.
and Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries for continuance indefinitely.
All right, that concludes our action on item number 6 this evening, and we'll move on to item number 5.
And for item number 5, we have a general plan amendment, community plan amendment, rezone tentative subdivision map, special development permit, exception from Title 22.24.630, and design review, located at 6331 Filbert Avenue, approximately 700 feet north of Greenback Lane in the Orangevale community. And the environmental document is a mitigated negative declaration.
Hello, good evening. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Kimber Gutierrez. I'm a Senior Planner with Planning and Environmental Review, and I will be presenting the Blossom Ridge project to you all tonight. Thank you to the applicant team and to any members of the public for your patience and for waiting for this item. Okay, so the project site is located at 6331 Filbert Avenue. It's approximately 700 feet north of the Greenback Lane, or of Greenback Lane in the Orangevale community. The subject site is 9.4 net acres in size and contains an orchard with a single-story, single-family residence on the northeastern portion of the site. Access to the residential structure is provided by an existing driveway extending west from Filbert Avenue. In addition to the residence, the site does contain a concrete pad for a former barn and a farm stand, which is located at the southeastern corner of the site. There is existing chain link fencing around the perimeter of the site's boundaries. And the majority of the vegetation on site consists of rows of fruit and nut trees, as the site has been operating as a commercial orchard since the 1930s, with a variety of native and non-native trees around the residence and around the perimeters of the parcel. The subject site is zoned agricultural residential 2 acres. Surrounding land uses of the proposed project area include single-family residential to the northwest and across Filbert to the east. Residences to the north and west are zoned residential density 2, so that's 2 dwelling units per acre, with the residences to the west zoned RD3, which is 3 units per acre. There are 2 additional properties kind of at the northeastern corner of the project site that are also zoned AR2. South adjacent to the subject site is a church, and that is within the Greenback Lane Special Planning Area. So as stated, the site has been operating as a commercial orchard since the 1930s. There have been no prior entitlement applications or code enforcement cases on the project site. The proposed project was originally submitted on May 5th of 2020 and involved rezoning the subject parcel from AR2 to RD3 and RD5 zones, and involved subdividing the parcel into a 43-lot subdivision. On April 6th of 2021, the Orangevale CPAC did meet by virtual teleconference to hear and consider this project as an informative workshop item. At the workshop, the applicant and owner provided more historical context, explaining that the subject site was an orchard that had been in the family for over 100 years, but was no longer producing and needed a new use. 16 members of the public spoke in opposition to the project. The majority of those expressed concern and opposition to the proposed rezoning to RD3 and RD5, stating that it was too dense and there is a preference for the entire site to be rezoned to RD2 instead. They also raised concerns about an increase in traffic, additional parking on Filbert Avenue, and losing the rural character of Orangevale. The CPAC ultimately agreed with the comments and encouraged the applicant to revise the project. After that meeting, the applicant did revise the project request in response to the feedback received at the workshop to include RD2, RD3, and RD4 zoning districts, and to subdivide the property into 32 single-family residential lots. That reduced the amount of lots by 11 and created a lower density housing projects, so from 4.5 units per acre to 3.4 units per acre. Further refinement to the zoning boundaries and related lot lines to conform to density allowances were made late in the review process, and I will go over those specifically on the next slide. So the applicant is requesting a general plan amendment, community plan amendment and rezone, tentative subdivision map, special development permit, exception from Title 22, and design review. The general plan amendment is requested to change the general plan land use designation of the property from ag res to low density residential. The community plan amendment and rezone is requested to change the land use designations from AR2 to RD3 and RD4. This is where further refinement to the zoning boundaries was made, and that occurred late in the review process. Specifically, Lot 2's lot lines were reconfigured to meet RD2 lot size requirements instead of RD4 as it was originally proposed. And the proposed zoning district for lots 1 and 2 were revised to RD3. So that completely eliminated the RD2 zoning district from the project. The tentative subdivision map is requested to divide the subject parcel into 32 single-family residential lots. The special development permit and exception from Title 22 entitlements were also identified as necessary after the project was presented to the CPAC for the formal recommendation. The side street yard setback, which is covered under the special development permit, is for the existing home and the proposed public street. The side street yard setback was not met by half a foot, so that is why that is included. And then the exception from Title 22 is to allow the proposed lots to be served by a mutual water company. And then just on these two, one last thing is that both the side yard setback and the exception, or the mutual water company provider, were identified on the materials itself that were presented to the CPAC, but they were not captured in the details of request. And then lastly, a design review is requested to determine substantial compliance with the design guidelines. Here's the rezone exhibit. So the approximately 9.57 gross acres, so that's 9.4 net and 9.57 gross, is proposed to be rezoned from AR2 to 5.77 acres of RD3 and 3.8 acres of RD4. Here is the tentative subdivision map. So the RD3 zoned property would be composed of 17 lots along the northeast and west perimeters of the subject site, as well as the existing single-family residence on Lot 1, as well as 4 lots along the southern portion of Filbert. The RD4 zoned property would be composed of 15 lots in the central area of the subject site and along the southern perimeter. No modifications to the existing single-family residence is proposed, and all other existing structures on the site, so the concrete pad and then the farm stand, are proposed for removal. And the proposed lots range in size depending on the assigned zoning district. Here's the conceptual site plan. So the subdivision is proposed to be served by a public street that's labeled on the map as Wickstrom Way. The project is conditioned to improve Filbert Avenue. All internal streets are proposed to meet minimum improvement standards as well. The conceptual site plan was provided to illustrate kind of the buildable portion of each lot. It includes the future driveway, potential driveway locations, as well as potential on-street parking stalls. So this shows a potential for 64 on-street parking via driveways, on-site parking via driveways, and 73 on-street parking for a total of 137 stalls. Oops, Sorry, I got a little bit more on this one. In addition to the existing residence, Lot 1 would contain a stormwater detention basin to minimize impacts associated with runoff. A preliminary drainage study was reviewed and approved by the Department of Water Resources, and the drainage study indicated that the project would not result in adverse impacts to neighboring properties. The site also has approximately 875 orchard trees on site and a variety of native and non-native trees around the residence and the perimeters of the parcel. There are 20 native trees on the subject site, 3 of which do not meet the 6-inch minimum for protection, and 6 native trees are proposed for removal. All of the orchard trees are also proposed for removal in addition to the other non-native trees. All existing fencing along the perimeter of the site is proposed to remain, with no replacement fencing proposed along the project at this time. And then lastly, water and sewer services would be provided by the Orangevale Water Company and the Sacramento Area Sewer District. An initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared pursuant to CEQA for this project and released for public review on November 2nd of 2022. During the public review period, 2 letters were received from public agencies and 4 comments were received from members of the general public. A response to comments was prepared and is concluded in the report package. A revised initial study, MND, was prepared pursuant to Section 15162 of the CEQA guidelines due to minor revisions to the project description, which I discussed, and to reference and discuss the most current drainage study prepared for the project. The revised ISMND was released for public review on February 24th, 2023, and the comment period does end today. I did want to touch on that briefly. I know we've gotten a lot of public comments regarding this matter. Because the Planning Commission is an advisory body for this project and not the final hearing body, we did feel that it was appropriate and acceptable to have that end today so that we have all the public comments for you. The environmental analysis discussed impacts to land use, agricultural resources, traffic and transportation, air quality, hydrology and water quality, biological resources, cultural resources, tribal cultural resources, hazards and hazardous materials, and greenhouse gas emissions. The document did conclude that the project would result in less than significant impacts to most environmental topics. However, in regards to biological resources and greenhouse gases, we did conclude that it would be less than significant with the implementation of mitigation measures. So because of this, a mitigation monitoring and reporting program has been prepared for the project and is included in the report package. The Orangevale CPAC met on April 19th, 2022 to hear and consider the project for a formal recommendation. Following staff and applicants' presentation, the CPAC members asked clarifying questions on the proposed subdivision design and the public improvements to Filbert Avenue. A number of the members of the public made verbal comments. Concerns were mostly the increase in density, so still wanting that full RD2 zoned property, an increase in traffic and parking, and there's also a number of concerns around increased crime and privacy. The other noted concern was drainage and water supply, particularly concerns about the how the stormwater detention basin would function on site, who would be maintaining it, and then also just any off-site runoff and where that would go. And there's also some concerns about potential for 2-story homes. Following deliberations, the CPAC did vote to recommend the board deny the requested entitlements, citing the above the comments that I just went over. The proposed project was also reviewed by the Design Review Advisory Committee on June 23rd, 2022. The DRAC members expressed concerns over the future grading of the parcel, and whenever the project is moving to the development phase, concerns about how the home designs would incorporate existing grading. So they did comment that to the greatest extent possible, they would like the future homes to be compatible with the natural terrain and topography of the site. And they also noted that the proposed density seemed appropriate and matched the surrounding context in regards to circulation and density. The DRAC does recommend that the board find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines, provided that the future home designs be reviewed by the design review administrator to ensure that they are designed to be compatible with the grading. So it was noted during that meeting that a condition is not necessary for that because our zoning code does require that the project home designs and landscaping come back through for a staff level design review. So although the CPAC recommended denial, the proposed project can be found consistent with applicable county plans, including the general plan, Orangevale Community Plan, and zoning code. With the implementation of mitigation measures identified in the initial study, MND, potential impacts would be reduced to a less than significant level. The project is compatible with surrounding zoning and land uses and found consistent with the design guidelines by the DRAC. Lastly, the proposed project would be creating a new housing opportunity, many new housing opportunities to meet the county's diverse needs, and would not be eliminating opportunities for people to pursue agricultural activity in the Orangevale community. So for these reasons, staff recommends approval of this entitlement package with the attached findings and conditions. So for tonight, you would be staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve a resolution recommending the board approve the amendment to the general plan land use designation. And then staff also recommends that the Planning Commission make the following recommendations to the board. So that'd be determining that the environmental analysis prepared is adequate and complete, adopting the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, approve a resolution authorizing an amendment to the Orangevale Community Plan, approve an ordinance authorizing a rezone, approve the tentative subdivision map, special development permit, exception from Title 22, subject to findings and conditions, and then lastly, find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Commissioner Tatishi, you're up first this evening.
Great. I just wanted to clarify because there's some keys or a key map on the project map zoning slide that you have. Just to clarify, there is, I'll say to the south, I'm assuming it's southwest corner, it says Green River Way and Green Top Way. It looks like it says it's zoned RD5 in there. Not on that map, on the aerial view of the surrounding area.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you see how the key kind of hides what that is zoned, that neighborhood that's to the southwest of it? That is RD5, correct?
Wait, this one here, over here?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to
RD5.
clarify because the 5 I think is cut off, but I want to make sure it's RD5.
Yes, it's RD5.
Okay, perfect. And then to the, I guess, southeast across Filbert diagonally, it says Echo Point Lane. That says BP. Can you explain what is that? Is that a...
That is our business and professional office zoning district.
Okay, and then the area around it in the SPA is...
the Greenback Lane Special Planning Area.
Okay, and those look like, are those townhomes, condos?
I am not sure what those are.
And is that a quarter mile, half a mile away, or what's the distance in your mind?
Probably less than a quarter
A
mile.
tenth a mile?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that vicinity, you have RD5, RD3, RD2, and some, I'll call it medium to higher density housing?
Yes, and I guess I should also touch on this particular Greenback Lane area is identified as a mixed-use corridor by the Sacramento County General Plan, and the project site is actually also identified as being within that mixed-use corridor.
Great. Okay, those are my questions for staff. Thank you.
Other questions for staff this evening?
Actually, I have a question. Can we go back to the conceptual site plan slide? Okay, so assuming I'm reading this correctly, so it looks like at least to the north, we're planning on or on the north part of the lot, we're planning on 4 lots. Well, there's a diagonal there. I'll call it 4. And then at the same, And then in the already developed area, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lots there. And on the west side, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots planned for the new subdivision. And there's already built 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm seeing how they line up properly and how it fits in with what's already existing.
Sure.
Thank you.
I've got a follow-up question to Commissioner Tatishi's. So when you say it's part of a mixed-use corridor, there's no overlay that modified the zoning when this was put into the mixed-use corridor. It was just identified as potential mixed use in the future.
Correct. Yeah. So they kept it as AR2 because of the existing orchard that was operating. So they didn't change the zoning of that at all because it was an orchard at the time. So.
Got it. Other questions for staff this evening?
Actually, I do have one more. I was curious about, because I guess there were some comments about increased crime, and I'm just curious if there was any detail, I guess how,
I think
if they were specific on how they thought that this might increase crime, or did they just say increased crime?
I think they just said increased crime. I don't recall any specifics with that because I was there at the CPAC meeting. I think there was the main concern was privacy and concern over having 2-story homes, and in addition to the grade difference that would be there.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I was, I've, in interest of disclosure, I've gone out to, see the property, and there's already 2-story homes in existence there. So,
yeah, I looked at that this morning too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, other questions for staff this evening?
Just more of clarification. So as part of the staff recommendation, we're looking at the subdivision of the map. Is that right?
We're looking at changing the land use designations, for the general plan, community plan, and zoning. And then the tentative subdivision map's part of that. And then the special development permit, exception from Title 22, and design review are all kind of bundled with the map.
Okay. Yeah. But should this board still make any movement one way or another, they're still going to have an opportunity for the community members to look at the design review or the actual facades or the sizing of the house? Or
No. So the design review piece that comes with the home plans and the landscape is a staff level review. So we do not notify members of the public of that review. It is just done at a staff level. It's non-discretionary.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right.
All right. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant team up to present this evening. If we could get the entire applicant team to be sworn in at once, just in case some question comes up. If you have, perfect.
Okay. And can we bring them down to the podium so we can hear them? Okay.
If you have no intention of presenting or answering any questions, you don't have to come down, but if there's any chance that you're going to answer a question this evening, let's just get everyone sworn in at once.
Okay, thank you. We've got one more coming along. And if you could please raise your right hand. Sir, any appropriate responses? I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this commission is the truth, so help you God? And if you do not swear, do you so affirm? I do. Okay, and if you could each state your names for the record when you're about to make a comment, and then make the statement, I have been sworn.
Good evening, Commissioners. We're going to do this old school style with packets instead of a PowerPoint, but there's only, I think, 11 slides. So we'll be able to work through those pretty quickly. I want to thank staff for a very good staff report and presentation, very thorough, which makes our job a lot easier. I want to introduce our team. We have Tom Tomich, who represents the owners. the Tomich family estate, Steve Norman, who is the engineer, and Marissa Fuentes with our office, Taylor and Wiley. I am Jim Wiley with Taylor and Wiley, and I have been sworn. Little history on the site. The Tomich family came here in 1897 and acquired this property, so they've had it a very long time. From the 1930s until about 5 years ago, they ran a fruit orchard with a sale stand on that site. The orchard is no longer viable. The use is too expensive from a labor and water standpoint for that small of a site. And so with the passing of Tom's father and those expenses, the family made the decision to move forward with changing the use of the property. And the use is similar to the former agricultural lots that are adjacent to the property, which have been developed as RD5, RD3, RD2, and a church. So earlier this evening, you had a presentation on the general plan and the status of housing. And as you are all quite aware, the county and the state currently have a housing crisis. SACOG with the blueprint and the MTP SCS and the county general plan encourage infill housing. County is working on an infill program. And specifically, Land Use Policy 4 provides that the county shall give priority to residential development on vacant or underutilized sites within existing urban areas that have infrastructure capacity available. As the staff has already indicated, the Blossom Ridge project is clearly an infill project that should be prioritized. The site is underutilized within the urban area, and infrastructure capacity exists for the project. So, as you've also heard, there's been a number of community concerns. First is change to the Orangevale community plan and the Orangevale character. Next is density, that the density is too high. Drainage was not appropriately addressed. Traffic, there's too much and not addressed. And then interface, concerns about the building houses next to existing houses. So first, I'm going to address the evolution of the map that was done to reduce density and make the project more coherent with what's out there today. And that is, we originally applied for the 43 lots and one road connection to Filbert. After hearing the comments at the workshop at the CPAC, the applicant went back and they reduced the density, dropping 11 lots for a total of 32 lots of RD3 and RD4 zoning. And as Commissioner Wong just pointed out, there are 4 new lots along 4 existing lots on the north side, 7 new lots along 8 existing lots on the west side, and the change to Orangevale is really consistent with what previously occurred in the area, and this is just catching up in this location. The next page that is provided is the page that Commissioner Tatishi referenced, and that just shows the surrounding land uses. And the next page after that has a little more detail on what the zoning is of the properties nearby. And as you can see, the RD5 is in the lower corner, then RD3 just west of the project, RD2 to the north. And then you have the BP, which is about 8 units to an acre, and the SPA, which at the corner of Filbert and Greenback, which is 700 feet from the project line. And that project is probably in the 15, 16 units per acre range. So the next issue was stormwater drainage, and significant work went into a preliminary drainage plan. It took over a year to complete with a lot of back and forth with Water Resources. And I know that there's a staff member from Water Resources here as well as our engineer. So if we get into specific technical issues, they can address that. But Water Resources signed off on that plan. And prior to improvement plans, a final drainage plan will be required. And a key component of that is in condition 31 that requires no adverse impacts to neighboring properties in a 2-year event, 10-year event, and 100-year event. I would also note that there's been concerns about the watershed that drains to the south. That watershed has been reduced by about 1.5 acres, and that's why when drainage comes down onto the church property, it will be the same as it is today because the area that's draining to it is less than what it is today. With regard to traffic, the number of units and location do not trigger the need for a traffic study. Much more traffic was historically at the site during the 6 months of harvest and sales than 32 homes because you had people coming all day long to buy fruit at that fruit stand. The revised map now has 2 streets connecting to Filbert, which was a concern expressed at the original CPAC member wanting 2 access versus 1. And then Filbert frontage improvements will be provided as staff indicated. And the Filbert and Greenback intersection is already signaled and has a left and a right turn lane. Finally, on interface, the owner is requesting a subdivision, but is not a builder, and many of the interface concerns may be addressed in the future with the site builder. The builder will need to go through design review at a staff level to make sure that staff feels that the facades and the landscaping meet the design review requirements. So in conclusion, again, as we all know, the county has a housing crisis. Infill housing development is a major county goal and tool to meet this crisis. The project is an appropriate density given its surrounding, an average of 3.4 units per acre. It's not a small lot. And we request that the commission proceed with staff recommendation to the board. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. I also want to go on the record and say thank you for meeting me out on the project site with the applicant to kind of go through the project. I appreciate you reaching out and walking me through it. Questions for the applicant this evening? Commissioner Corona-Sabagnano?
Yeah, I also want to thank you for meeting with me on the project site and showing me around and some of the information they shared today. I just had one clarifying question about the sidewalk improvements in the front of the project, and I can't remember. I think we talked about this. Is it going to start where the existing home is now, or is it going to include the 2 adjacent?
It will only be from where the existing home is now that's part of the project down to the church property. So there will be a gap there with the 2 existing homes that are not part of the project.
Okay. And is there a sidewalk there now?
There is not.
And is there a sidewalk on the other side?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. It seems to me, I'm not a developer, so it seems to me like that should be connected.
But the property, so
okay.
That's why it stops where it does. I do know in certain communities, the county has gotten grants to acquire the land and put in complete sidewalks, and this might be a good location for that.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, maybe Kimber can.
I was just going to add that typically projects that come in, development projects are only required to improve the frontage that is along their project boundaries or their parcel boundaries. So that's why the 2 northern parcels are not included. But then I think also if there is any development proposal on those 2 lots, that is when typically the sidewalks and improvements would be triggered at that time.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant this evening?
Just the standard, the applicant is good with all the conditions and findings and everything in the staff
Yes,
report?
we've reviewed them and concur with them.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment. First up, we have Edmundo Pucci.
Good evening. Very briefly, I'm representing the community at the Divine Savior Catholic Church immediately south of this project. And we have 3 major concerns, the same concerns that were voiced at the CPAC meeting and the reason for the CPAC vote to deny the application. First is traffic. The traffic at the intersection of Filbert and Greenback is already impacted. We had to spend $160,000 to fence the church property to avoid the damage that was occurring from the traffic crossing through our parking lot facilities to avoid that traffic light at Filbert and Greenback. Since we've created that fence, the traffic now backs up to beyond this location. And as stated earlier, it's incorrect. The traffic that was created or that existed because of the fruit stand was quite minimal. Most of the traffic was foot traffic from the neighborhood and from the church parishioners after church. The second key point I want to point out is the drainage. I handed out 4 slides to the members regarding our concerns with the drainage. The first is that southwestern corner currently in major storms does drain into the church facility, and it is impacting our drainage system that's been designed to handle the drainage on our own facility. And in the owner's the applicant's drainage report, it specifically says that there will be stormwater release overland in the southwest direction during large storm events. And I submit to you the recent events that we've had since the beginning of this year have been major storm events, and we have had runoff coming into the church property. That drainage plan right now only provides for a small swale, about 6 inches deep, that is unlined and no facility at all for it to drain for the rest of the drainage system on this subdivision. And then lastly, if you look at one of the slides that I provided, it shows the location where that drainage system that drains toward Filbert will cross Filbert Avenue and drain into a small swale that is not maintained by anyone. It's not a public drainage facility. Lastly, I think it's really important that the commission understand the rural circumstance in the rural community that is Orangevale. It is not the mixed use that you have along Greenback. Also, the lots that are adjacent to the west of this subdivision, these lots are RD3, and the ones to the very southwest corner, as Mr. Tichy pointed out, that is RD5. They do not impact the Filbert Avenue traffic pattern because
Thank you, Mr.
their
Pucci.
traffic pattern goes directly onto Greenback. So those are the high points, and I know there's a time limit, but I would like to urge you a no vote and ask the applicant to reconsider this design, and particularly to pay attention to the drainage. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Bob Riley.
Thank you for having us this evening. I agree with what Ed just said in a lot of respects. He covered pretty much all the points. I served on the Orangevale PAC for 10 years back in the 70s and 80s, and the bruises still show sometimes. But what I have found in my experience, that if a drainage issue is not addressed initially, it's either very difficult or next to impossible to fix after the fact. And a lot of these homes, especially in the northeast corner, have flooded before or come within a few inches of being flooded. The storm drain that we have on the back of our parking lot at the church, of which I am a member, has overflowed a couple of times, and we got nailed by the county years ago to clean out the storm drain on Greenback Lane that our storm drain feeds into, because we were accused of plugging it up. And we still haven't figured out why, but we didn't fight the county on it. But the runoff from the orchard put a lot of silt down our storm drain into the county storm drain and clogged things up. So other than that, I would really urge you to reconsider and look closely at the storm runoff issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. We appreciate you coming down this evening. Next up, we have Doug Elliott.
Hi, thank you. I live directly behind lots 4, 5, and 6. The biggest concern is going to be two-story homes looking over into my backyard. Right now, the elevation of that orchard is about 4 feet higher than my property right now. Second of all, I think from lot 1 through 6, I think those are ones people are more concerned about having one stories, limiting the houses to similar roof sightlines there. Also, I got to correct the person. There are no sidewalks on either side of Filbert, from the church all the way to Cape Wyndham Place. There's sidewalks there, but on the opposite side, on the east side of Filbert, there's no sidewalks all the way to the school. Also, the orchard has been in disarray. I admit that. He's letting it get out of hand. The weeds have gotten extremely high, 4 or 5 feet high, and hopefully he'll take care of that pronto before it dries out and becomes a fire hazard. Also, the watershed. Right now, we still get a lot of water coming from the orchard and the rains into our yard, and hopefully he's going to mitigate that and get that taken care of. Also, the traffic. You're going to have, each one of these homes could potentially have a ADU attached to it. There's going to be a lot more traffic. We got a lot of kids walking to and from school. There's 6 schools on Filbert Avenue, and kids walking up in there. And if they're going to develop this property, not just sidewalks in front of his side, I think they need to put sidewalks on both sides of Filbert for it's safe for the kids to travel. We've already had 2 or 3 accidents with kids getting hit or in the last year on Filbert. And I hate to see any more accidents like that happening. Orangevale is a pretty rural area. Basically from Orangevale open all the way to Cass Road, there's no sidewalks. It's all pretty rural. You'd be putting another 300 minimum traffics a day going down Filbert Avenue. But my main concern right now, I'd like to see maybe eliminate to 25 lots, 20 lots, but behind lot 1 through, or 2 through 6, hopefully they can limit that to one-story houses, similar roof sightlines. But and we need homes. I agree with that, but I just want responsible building. And I think if we go RD2, I think no one's going to be upset about that. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Appreciate you coming down tonight. And do we have any other further comment this evening?
No, there's no public comment on the phone.
All right, that will go ahead and conclude our public comment. At this time, I'd invite the applicant back down to address the public comment.
Yes, Jim Wiley back again on behalf behalf of the applicant. One thing I want to clarify before we go into other subject matters is that the Tomich family will have a fire break, as they always do, along the boundary of the property once it's dry enough to till. It's just too wet right now to run tractors through there. So that will be done before it's fire season. As far as the sidewalks, as Kimber said, we'll be doing what's in front of our property. The other side is the responsibility of the other side of the street. That's just how development occurs. Again, there are programs out there where the county does come in, get special grants to do connections to schools, but that's a huge burden for a small project to do. And so we would ask that you keep the conditions as are proposed by the staff. With regard to drainage, we have met with the church. We will, once there's a builder, we will get them introduced to the church, and hopefully that can be resolved in a decent fashion. Again, this goes through another level of design on the drainage study, and there can be discussions on tying into that inlet at that time. I would say legally, when they developed, they needed to be developed in a fashion that took the drainage off the site. We are not increasing the drainage off the site. So although the site does drain onto it, it historically drained onto their site. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. We would ask that you, again, support the project and move it forward to the board.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant after public comment? All right. Thank you, Mr. Riley. And with that, we'll move on to deliberation. Anyone want to kick us off this evening? All right, I'll kick us off this evening. I understand the residents' concerns over traffic. I sat in some traffic myself. I unfortunately scheduled a time when school was being let out, and I was late to my meeting because of the traffic associated with the school. And so I get that that is an impacted area due to school traffic. And it is a small road, and this will be more houses on there. So I understand those concerns. I also look at the parcels that are around there, and I guess my overwhelming thought is that we shouldn't necessarily penalize a property owner for being one of the last standing agricultural parcels that is in that area. If this was further to the north, I would have more concerns because of the larger lot nature of northern Orangevale. But I do see that this is fitting in relatively well. I do think it's sad. I think we would all prefer to be going to a nice orchard that's in our neighborhood, and I'm sure the owner of the land would prefer that that orchard was still in operation by his family as it had been for 100 years or close to it. So with that being said, I understand the need for housing, and I am in support of the project. I also would ask the applicant to look at how do we connect the sidewalks. I do think the residents have a great point when they bring up, well, there is no sidewalk on one side and there are two houses there, and to just say that's not part of our parcel. I understand that, but maybe we could work with the residents and those two owners and figure out how to do it. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that would probably donate money to get that connected. And so I think if we could make that work, while it may not be the applicant's responsibility and the county's responsibility to enforce anything on that, it would be great if we could make that connection happen. And I also understand the concerns if there is a significant grade difference, that we look at sight lines from those backyards of those existing RD2 households and see whether a single story is more appropriate in those areas. But that's all to come. I just ask that the applicant take those thoughts into consideration as they move into the development of the parcel. Would anyone else like to comment before I make a motion? All right, I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
Second. Third.
All right, any further deliberation?
I just want to say on the record that I am also thankful for the applicant for welcoming me at the project site and driving with me through the neighborhood and answering all of my questions. And really do concur with Chair Rathel that hopefully the community still has an opportunity to work with the future builders to really make sure that the sightlines and privacy aspects, as they wrote, might hopefully be addressed in the future design review of those homes. Thank you.
Now, I'll just also commend all the residents and the church to the south and bringing up the concerns. These drainage plans are complex, and we hire experts to evaluate their impacts. And as we saw in January, the weather can really be unpredictable, and we saw that recently. And we're just trying to do our best to engineer solutions that will function in extreme weather events. And so the feedback of local residents and that local expertise of what areas back up in my yard or on my church property is valuable to engineer. So I think your concerns have made a better plan, and I think the applicant will continue to work to make sure that plan is sufficient going forward.
One other thing, Chair, and I'm not too sure if this might be a staff thing, but Kimber, thank you for your presentation. I did note that because the number of units do not necessitate a traffic study, perhaps it might be a good recommendation for the county to just look at the Filbert and Greenback corridors overall on the timing of the lights. When I visited there, I try to do my 1/1000 as much as possible, but the timing of the lights, I think traffic light optimization might be best for all safety and purposes, especially when we do peak hours during times of service. Just my 2 cents, but thank you.
Oh. All right, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Tatishi,
Yes.
Wong,
Yes.
and Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, that concludes item number 5 this evening, and we are now moving on to the Planning Director's report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Todd Smith. I don't have much to report on this evening, although I do want to make mention of Commissioner Borja, you mentioning coordination with DOT on the timing of transportation or traffic signals. I do know that DOT is currently working on a Greenback Lane project, and perhaps they can incorporate your feedback into the design of that, as well as any new signals that are coming along with that project. So we'll pass that along to DOT staff.
And we'll move on to miscellaneous scheduling items.
I have a question to the staff, I guess. Will there be an April 10th Planning Commission meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we have
2 items.
2 items. Yes.
I probably will not be in attendance then. It's the beginning of my children's spring break, so I think we're going to be out of town.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on April 10th?
Same here. I will be in attendance, but remotely. I'll be out.
Well, we no longer have an emergency or an urgency.
Oh, so I can no
order
longer.
from the governor, so it's got to be under one of specified.
Hi, you guys.
sections.
Hi, this is Flo from the clerk's office. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. But I do want to respectfully address the board. You can participate remotely. It just depends on what business you're doing remotely.
What business you're doing remotely? Is that what you said?
Correct.
Like I'm on vacation, or what does that mean
Or
by
like-
what business we're doing?
Yeah, Flo and I looked at this.
Not you, Mr. Tatishi. You said that you would be absent. There was another board member who said that they would need to participate remotely. And
Yeah,
so I was really addressing that board. I
Okay.
didn't see who it was.
I could
Right. I didn't sound like your reason for not being here would qualify under the new exceptions under the Brown Act. If there are urgency circumstances, let me take a step back. Okay, so there's the old Brown Act rules where you can participate remotely, but you have to publicize where you're going to be. You've got to let the public be there, and it's got to go out on the agenda at least 3 days ahead of time. Now, under the new rules, that old process is still there, but now there's allowances for emergency issues like family, medical, child care, I think family care. And to do that, you've got to let the clerk know at least before the agenda goes out.
There's
And
also, if you're attending business on behalf of the agency too, Bill, that's why it caught my attention when he said he was going to be out of town.
right, and
Not
then
Mr.
there's
Tatishi, but the other member.
right. So then there's another one for if you're on business and I don't believe, and I can send you an email, all of you an email specifying all this. But for that last one, I think that you can do that kind of last minute. It doesn't have to be on the agenda, but you do have to submit in writing to the rest of the commission what your reason is for not being here. So I'll make a note to send you guys a summary of what those rules are for next time.
Understood. Thank you, Flo. Thank you, Mr. Bill.
You're welcome, Mr. Borgia. Thank you, Bill.
Similar to that, is there going to, I will be here on the 10th, but the 24th, is there a meeting planned for that day?
Yes, we do have items for that day as well.
Okay.
So are you
I will
expecting
need-
to be absent?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be on an advocacy trip.
Okay. So far, 2 absent on the 10th and potentially 1 on the 24th? Anything else? No? Okay.
Are Mondays bad? I'm just kidding.
No, right?
All right.
Thank you, guys.
I do have one other miscellaneous scheduling item, and I think we just continued it until we had everyone here, was the election of a chair and vice chair. We didn't skip it, and I'll just carry on being the chair. I want to give everybody the opportunity to kick me off if they want, so should we add that to the next agenda?
Was that on the agenda for tonight? It wasn't? Oh, yeah, so we'll do it next time.
Oh, darn. Okay.
And we'll be back down to 3 members.
Oh, it has to be publicized as an actual
I have
vote.
no intention of running for any position on this commission, so please proceed without me. I'm comfortable with any of you chairing or vice chairing the commission.
I was going to nominate Chair Rathel to continue on.
I don't think we can handle it tonight. I think we'll have to handle it at the next meeting since we didn't agendize it.
Understood.
Correct.
But I'll stay as your de facto chair until we have a formal vote. And we're now on to any other miscellaneous scheduling items? All right, general public comments?
And there are none.
All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:58 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.